Hello, everybody. My name is Julius, and I am here once again for a podcast that hopefully you are ignoring. Hopefully, you're not ignoring the podcast that will come out tomorrow. Tomorrow, a very special podcast is coming out, a narrative podcast that we at the Goat Movie Podcast have been working on for a good amount of time. Since January of 2021, I think it was. That was when the writing process began. And I am joined here for a very special holiday episode, because this is coming out the day before Christmas. So this is technically the Star Wars holiday special for us. Happy
no. Oh, no.
Happy Life Day, everybody. I am joined here by my co-lead in Star Wars Lightspeed, Mr. Nick Gallagher. How are you, my friend?
I'm good, man. Thanks so much for having me. This is my very first appearance on a podcast. So in the year 2022, going on 23, it's long overdue.
Well, it's interesting that we're actually doing this now, because I wanted to ask you to do something like this.
Yeah.
Because, we did Lightspeed.
Yeah.
We worked on it. And we'll get into how that all happened and everything. But I felt, should we do something like a commentary or a podcast or something about just you and I and the process of everything? And you just came up and said, "Hey man, you should do that." I'm like, "Oh shit. All right. Let's ask him now." And here we are.
I don't even remember that, but I'm glad I did.
Yeah,
It's great.
it's great. So Nick, you are an actor based in LA, and you do a lot of voice work in general. So why don't you tell everybody about your background in acting and everything, and what got you involved in this project?
In this project, it's a very local Northeast LA story, which I think is very touching. I've lived in LA. I've been acting down here for about 4 years. I've been taking acting seriously as a career for the last 6, going on 7. It had been something I did ever since I was a kid, always peripherally to some other endeavor. Like I went to really intense schools as a kid, so I would blow off steam from homework and tests by doing plays, and then in college I got my bachelor's in music, and I would decompress from that by being in my film student friends' films, and a couple of student-directed plays and things like that. And I did my first professional production my year after graduated when I was living in Bangkok. I happened upon a theater company run by an American director named Peter O'Neill, who is, I think, still the best director I've ever worked with. The guy was absolutely incredible, and every member of the ensemble was as well. And that inspired me to move back to California, and the next 6 years happened. And so anyways, my favorite coffee shop near where I live is Charlie's Coffee House.
Hey.
Shout out Kelly. And I was coming in a lot. I guess it was the beginning of this year of 2022 when I started talking to you, because that is where you slang spro, as the barista bros say. And I think you just mentioned that you must have been wearing a shirt like the one you're wearing now, of like an X-Men issue 1, and we got to talking about it. And at some point you mentioned that you were preparing to do a narrative podcast, and it was at a time where COVID was starting to recede a bit with vaccinations and stuff, and I'd spent all of the previous year helping my girlfriend with her fight in breast cancer, which is now in remission. And
thank God.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, I remember when you told me that.
Yeah.
And that was, I'm. Go ahead.
We're here to talk about Star Wars, and tomorrow is Christmas after all. But it was a time where I wanted to get back to doing something in acting for the pure joy of it. And when you told me about, well, first off, you kind of just had me at Star Wars.
Yeah.
And so I just made the bold decision of writing my name and email address on a it was like a hot coffee cup sleeve, and just said, like, if you need an actor for this, I'd love to help out.
Yeah. That was one of the most exciting points for me, because I remember I think I had served you a couple times previous to us actually talking, and what prompted me to because I wasn't trying to like pitch myself or anything, you pitch my project or anything, because I didn't know what you were about other than that you were reading Sid Fields' book about screenwriting.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, hey, dude, I've read that. I know that book. That's a cool one. Are you enjoying it? And you're like, man, yeah, I'm writing and everything.
Mm-hmm.
This is the book to read, you know? I was like, that's awesome. And then I asked about like what you do. And I was surprised because you record audiobooks and everything, and you perform in them and you narrate them, and a lot of them are for sale and everything.
Oh, that's right. Oh,
yeah.
We'll get to that later.
Oh yeah. So when I heard this, I was like, oh my God, should I do something? Should I like jump on him or something? But yeah, it's all about that chance, right? It's about, just kind of bringing up lightly.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm working on something similar.
Yeah.
A narrative podcast. And then when you did come up to me and you said, hey, if I would love to help you out, I was so incredibly relieved. Like, I can't even express it enough how relieved I was when you came up, because first of all, your voice, it fits Duncan perfectly.
Thank you.
It really does. Like, I was thinking, could he? Because I thought I was screwed. I didn't really have anyone. At that time, I didn't really have anyone in mind for Duncan, because I had a guy previously, but the scheduling wasn't going to work and everything. And then you come in and you have a cry. I mean, you are in the field. You know what I mean? And I'm just like, dude, this might happen actually.
Mm-hmm.
And then we actually got down to sit to talk about it. We did the recording process, and we've talked ever since, because you still come in.
Yeah. Shout out Charlie's again.
The iced coffee with oat milk and vanilla.
Yeah.
That's how often Nick comes in.
We don't talk about that one time he forgot the vanilla.
Oh no!
I'm just kidding. That never happened.
I don't think that was me.
I'm just kidding. Oh God.
Shit. The thing is, I listen to the podcasts at work sometimes during downtime, so it's in my head now. It's in my head now.
I'm giving real man of the people vibes for your listeners now.
Well, so what's your history with Star Wars and everything? You grew up with Star Wars. You have friends that you talk to Star Wars all the time about.
Yeah, dude, Star Wars I think was the first film I recall seeing in theaters, because they did the digital re-releases back in theaters in the 90s, and my parents took me to see them. And
all three of them?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. The first one that my earliest memory is seeing Empire Strikes Back. Man. And it was funny because after we saw them and we started like getting action figures, and someone mentioned that A New Hope was first screened in 1977, and I was like, what are you talking about? This was just released.
So saw it yesterday in the theater. So
it was, despite it being from decades ago, like, it was something that I kind of followed the through line of Star Wars through to the Force Awakens being released, because they released the prequels and I was too young to realize that there weren't the best movies ever made.
Right.
I was just kind of taken in by like Liam Neeson's performance and Ewan McGregor, and I think that papered over a lot of holes when I was young. And the Star Wars, the lightsaber choreography. But since you're into this sort of this nerd culture field, do you know the YouTube channel Super Bunny Hop? It's like a It's
what do they do? What do they talk about?
It's this guy who's a really good video game journalist, and he does video essays about them. And he talks about, I think it was him, who talks about this notion of like being too young to see the original trilogy come out in theaters. Peak Star Wars for him and his generation was like peak of Star Wars video games being released.
Like the Old Republic and stuff like that.
Yeah, because you had asked me before like what my favorite Star Wars story was or movie.
Yeah.
And when I thought about it, it was like, I guess it's Empire Strikes Back, but it was like the one that probably has the most like revisiting value for me is probably the original Knights of the Old Republic game.
Yeah.
And because there were all of those games being released from like the late 90s with Shadows of the Empire through to like Knights of the Old Republic, or like maybe you really liked The Force Unleashed.
There was a Republic Commando.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
My friends, I never played that, but I had friends who loved that.
That's a
game.
great one.
Yeah.
The Battlefront games.
Oh man, yeah, dude. What year is that? I like every Friday I would come home from school, and I would ask my brother who, his computer could run Battlefront 2. I'd ask him if I could play it. And yeah,
I think that came out the year of Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Because they had a cool story mode where you played as one of the 501st.
Yeah,
it was your perspective on. It was like a story of the prequels that I was into. Mm-hmm. Of the clones and how they went from that period to the Empire and everything. I thought that was dope.
Yeah, so that's what I did instead of date. In the mid early 2000s.
Worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, same. But yeah, so Star Wars, big part of your life and everything. And,
yeah.
And it's a testament. It shows how smart they are about re-releasing like the original trilogy in theaters to grab a whole new like generation of audiences.
I guess it worked perfectly.
Yeah. and that'll just get you revved up for the prequels because they were released before the prequels initially released. Mm-hmm. And no, they're brilliant. George Lucas, if anything, is a brilliant like businessman, marketer.
Oh, sure.
Oh my God. Like no one, look, there's a Darth Vader statue right there next to you, It's incredible.
I mean, it sold for $1 billion. Like,
yeah.
My God, I wonder what it's worth now.
I don't know. That's a good question.
That'd be a really interesting business school case study.
Yeah, that would be an interesting documentary.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the documentary, The People versus George Lucas?
No, I haven't. I've heard it's really good, but I haven't.
It is a really good one. It's about the relationship between Lucas and the fans. And from all perspectives.
Yeah, and like it's the most benign case that I can think of separating the art from the artist, because like Lucas got like death threats after the release of the prequels, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. And it's a bit excessive. I mean, I've had my opinions in the past about the prequels, but never go that far. Mm-hmm. Especially now after us making Lightspeed. Not that it's on the in terms of viewership or whatever, the level of the prequels, but we've created something. So if we got that type of response, it wouldn't feel too good.
Yeah. Oh no, God, of course not. Of course not.
So it had been a while since you had been like acting, from the time of COVID to Lightspeed, right?
Yeah. I had done. I mean, actors audition incessantly, and like if you count my survival job of producing audiobooks, that is, I guess, acting. It's not the most creatively fulfilling thing. Like, for example, when we started hanging out, I had just finished Eat Your Way Back to Rock Hard Erections, which is on sale on Audible now.
The best title ever.
The best title ever. The best story is, hands down, it's called Save Him, which is the story of American commandos traveling back in time to save Jesus from the cross.
That is freaking epic.
That is,
what the hell?
It's not to distract from. We're here to talk about Star Wars Lightspeed, but if you're at all intrigued by that, it's on sale now. Save Him.
Well, that's save him.
But anyways, that is all to say that there had not been a lot of opportunities to do something just for the joy of it.
Right.
And being an actor and trying to make your living off of it can kind of distort your priorities, because prior to COVID and even during it, I wouldn't consider things that weren't paid.
Right.
It's just like, I'm an actor, I'm a professional.
Right.
What do you mean you're not going to pay me? But then at a certain point, I was like, that is not the attitude I had when I started, when it was just about the joy. And I need that in my life again. So it was very serendipitous that around that time I kind of, made a handshake with myself and said, like, I'm just going to open up the spectrum of what I'm willing to consider, like, to whatever, as long as it sounds fun, as long as the people are cool and professional, like, let's do it.
Yeah.
And right around that time, you mentioned Lightspeed, and it felt like a perfect opportunity.
I felt the same way because it's very, in my experience, which is limited in terms of making things, it's rare when something fits so well in terms of everything, but specifically in this case, casting. You know, because I feel like first, you know, just talking to you, like hearing your voice is very distinct. Like you have a very distinct voice.
I'm glad, thank you.
And it fit that character really well. When we did the first little, I guess, audition, right? Like we read through a scene.
Yeah.
Where it was Duncan and it was his first scene and everything. I was listening to it while we were reading, and I felt that it not only just fit because of your voice and everything, but because of the attitude you brought to not only the character but the project itself, because it's a fan thing and everything. And I'd been working on it for so long, and I think the worry for me on my end, and I'm curious if you feel the same way regarding other projects, but my worry about like reaching out to people is that thing of, you know, I don't want to waste anyone's time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I want to make sure this is something of quality and something that is professional and something that just comes out that we can all be proud of,
mm-hmm.
you know, and I feel like that's really tough for pretty much every project, you know, to find that.
Yeah.
And I felt like when we started talking and started reading and then eventually started recording, it felt more and more like a real project, you know. And it was really great.
Yeah.
What was the recording process like for you?
Well, I should say that I think professionals always make exceptions for friends.
Oh.
I think they always make exceptions for good times, and so I wouldn't worry too much about reaching out to people for fear of rejection, especially if it's people you know.
Yeah.
For the sake of like, oh, this is, you know, not good enough or whatever. Number one, the worst thing that'll happen is they'll say like, I'm just not free that day.
Right.
But I mean, I will tell you, like the most active people I know working in movies will just drop what they're doing to help out a friend with the project. It's one of the most wonderful things about living in LA and living the life of an artist is it's a calling that is so consuming isn't the right word because that sounds unhealthy.
It's like driven.
Yeah, it's so all encompassing for people that like they derive such joy out of it that, you know, as in need as like a creator is for people to help bring their vision to life, there is also just such an appetite for their counterparts to just get to do what they love. Like a friend of mine is like a union cinematographer. He actually worked on Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Oh wow.
And over the summer he cleared his weekend and helped a mutual friend of ours, shoot a little horror film in his house.
Oh wow, that's great.
Yeah. And it's turned out phenomenally so far.
You know, that's a great point that you make. And I think I mentioned this before, but I was watching a TED Talk from Nardwuar, the Human Serviette, the Canadian interviewer who interviews musicians, and he was doing a TED Talk because he'd been working for years, and he talked to all sorts of people like Jay-Z and you know, Weird Al and all sorts of big names.
That's the spectrum right there.
Yeah.
Those are the two ends.
Exactly. And his advice, which I've learned to take heavily, especially in regards to this project and podcasting in general, is all you have to do is ask, you know, and asking doesn't hurt. The reaction doesn't hurt as much as you might think it will. And you can get great results because you just asked.
Yeah.
You know, and I think our case and the case of everyone else who's involved, it was a great example of just asking.
Yeah.
You know, and we have a project that is going to come out tomorrow. And it's after years of working on it. It's crazy. It's actually coming out, you know. Now, before this podcast, I sent you you're the first person to have been sent. And
oh wow, really?
Yes, the cut of the podcast that is going to be coming out tomorrow, and you're the first person. Did you hear it?
Yeah, man, I was listening to it on the way home.
Oh, okay, cool. You listened to it,
fresh in my mind.
Oh, perfect. So you are the first person, aside from myself, of course, to listen to it in its completion. Mm-hmm. What people will be hearing tomorrow. What were you thinking while listening to it?
I thought I was listening to a Star Wars movie.
Oh, really?
And it was so fun. There's a couple moments.
Now we'll try to keep spoilers limited.
I will be very tight-lipped. Don't worry. There's without spoiling anything, just the moments of if. Okay, it's hard to not spoil anything, but I'm not. Don't worry, listener. Don't worry. Any moment where you get to hear yourself do like a one-liner, kind of like Han Solo being like, "Hey, sorry for the mess."
Yeah.
That was the highlight of my day.
Oh, really?
That was really cool. That was really fun. I was getting some exercise before I came here, and I was just kind of standing like in the middle of a weight room, just listening on my headphones, because I was like, hold on, what's happening next?
You're the spotter. You're just just chill, dude. Wait, hold on a second.
You're fine.
I'm coming up. So that's a good reaction. So you get to hear your voice all the time, because you work with your voice and everything. One of the most exciting things for me regarding this project was getting different people, some people who don't know each other, and kind of putting them together in scenes. And I mean, it's filmmaking, and it's especially voice work where that happens all the time. Yeah. But there's something about the people that and your friends and everything, where you're hearing them as different people, and it's like they're on an alien planet and everything, and you're running and shooting people and everything. You shot my friend Jacob in one scene and everything. It's really exciting, Yeah. What was the first audiobook that you made, and when was it?
First audiobook I ever made was in 2016 for an author named Carrie Neitz, and the title is Amish Vampires in Space.
You work on the best books.
I get lucky on occasion. It was something that I had just moved back from Bangkok to living with my family in the Bay Area. I'm from Oakland. And I had my microphone from music school, and I wanted to make some money, and started auditioning for audiobooks. And that was the very first one. Carrie doesn't know this, the author, but when I moved back to LA, I told an actress who's now one of my best friends about it, and she liked the idea so much that she bought the rights to turn it into a TV show.
What?
And wrote the pilot for Amish Vampires in Space, and has been shopping it around ever since.
Dude, that's so cool, man.
It's so serendipitous. I don't think she told the author that that's how she heard about it.
Oh my god!
But that was the first one. A lot of them have not been as fun as that, but I just love getting to say that, like, oh, Amish Vampires in Space,
yeah, that was me.
yeah. I don't like to brag, but
I mean that sounds really fun, And when it comes to the recording process, do you read everything in the book, like narration and characters and everything? So what was the difference from that to Lightspeed?
Biggest difference was working with you, because you were my scene partner for all of them, and we were working together. I also had you as a director, which was really nice, because I think with audiobooks, there's an understanding that you're just being read a story, so I don't think that there is the same degree of depth of performance that's required. Not to the same degree, like, obviously any professionally done audiobook, you're gonna hear someone who's like giving it their all, but in a Star Wars story, we're being chased by bounty hunters. No spoilers. Just for example, blasters go off. Spaceships are flying. There's explosions, and so you really have to calibrate your performance to the given circumstances of the scene, which can be pretty extraordinary. And it can be hard to fully imagine on your own. Like, for example, I record in a 3x3 foot booth covered in moving blankets. Yeah. So you really have to imagine, like, doing anything that isn't in a phone book. And so you were really helpful in just remembering the space that we're in, remembering what's going on, calibrating elements of the performance to where our characters, Gordon and Duncan, would be in space and sort of where their heads are at. So having someone else to bounce takes off of was such a luxury compared to just doing it all by myself.
Yeah, well, I felt like while we were recording and we were going through the scenes and reading through them and everything, that, and I'm curious if this is true. I felt like when listening to what you were doing and everything, and we were going through the multiple takes, were you taking, because it's obviously Star Wars, that world and everything, were there specific characters you were kind of like trying to like emulate? Because you mentioned Han Solo a bit earlier. Was that the main source?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we're talking Star Wars, yeah, that's he's hands down the first one that comes to mind. Mm-hmm. But Duncan does carve his own niche. I may have mentioned this to you before, but we're talking to fellow Star Wars fans, right?
Yes,
we're talking to fellow. He kind of, without spoiling anything, obviously,
right?
Duncan kind of reminds me of Atten Rand from Knights of the Old Republic too.
Yeah,
because there is this through line that runs throughout the entire story of Lightspeed of guilt and healing and processing and moving on. And in Knights of the Old Republic too, like that's a really surprisingly deep and emotional optional side quest to help this like traumatized war veteran like come to terms with what he was subjected to and heal and move on and get to live the rest of his life.
Yeah.
And I think our characters, both Duncan and Gordon in their own way, have this depth and this baggage to them, which the events of the story offer an opportunity to address. Mm-hmm. So that was something that kind of clicked in my head as I was reading through it and then working through it with you.
Yeah. I think we both, kind of got that this was. I think our goal in recording this, and certainly while writing it, was to make this feel a lot like Star Wars, but go in a very different direction, because it's set during so far before the original trilogy. There's not really a war in it. It's set around the time of the High Republic and everything. So I'm curious about your thoughts on like the modern Star Wars, because the way I was approaching Lightspeed was I want to see something different from this universe. Did you feel the same way with the latest films and everything? Did you, and the shows and everything?
I haven't seen a ton of the shows. I don't think I gave the Mandalorian a chance to get to the point where it got really good.
Right.
Because, man, I think with the second season, after every episode that aired, like my social media feeds would just get flooded with fan reactions.
Yeah.
So I know what happens, despite not having seen it. I think there is. Your question of wanting to see something different in Star Wars is an interesting one to answer, and I feel like that could be its own podcast, especially with the new films. I think for the most part, I share one. I was just hanging out with a filmmaker friend of mine, and we were talking about this phrase, which is like the lifeblood of Hollywood, which is same but different.
Right.
And I think that's often said in jest, but I do think that with something as archetypical as Star Wars, you do actually want to walk that line. So I think The Force Awakens was pretty firmly on the same side of the line.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, I haven't rewatched it, but I remember when I watched The Last Jedi thinking, I actually kind of like most of the new stuff that they introduced. Mm-hmm. Like the sort of the synchronicity between Rey and Kylo Ren. This is actually a hot take, so
I'm excited.
Hold on to your butts.
Well, I watched Last Jedi yesterday, actually, so I'm fresh on this.
I actually liked Laura Dern's character. What's her name? Vice Admiral Holdo?
Yeah.
I actually thought that presenting the archetype of a seasoned, badass war veteran through the lens of this very elegant, well kept together, purple-haired woman, I thought that was a unexpected presentation of that archetype, and that is all I needed to be interested in that character. Mm-hmm. And part of that is just Oscar Isaac's performance of that moment of like, she was the one who did the war equivalent of the Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs. I can't remember. That was enough to just make me go like, all right, cool, I'm in.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's as simple as that. I'd have to rewatch it. I did not love. Here's another hot take, and let me preface this by saying I'm really looking forward to Glass Onion. I am not the biggest Rian Johnson fan.
Oh, okay, just in general.
Yeah, I enjoyed Knives Out.
Okay.
I kind of enjoyed The Last Jedi. And I really liked Breaking Bad.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I don't think he reinvents the wheel to the degree that his reputation warrants. Mm-hmm. And I didn't love the twist with Rey's parents. That didn't believe me.
Oh, that
didn't convince me.
Of them just being no one.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think if you're 8, you remember your parents better than that.
Right.
But I do respect him for trying to do something different.
I feel that exact same way, but in the case of The Rise of Skywalker, where her parents were Palpatine's, or I guess daughter, and then no, I just I wasn't with that. I just didn't. I actually preferred her being like kind of no one. You know what I mean? Kind of just a person who was caught up in that whole thing. I think it was a cool subversion. I was cool with that, you know?
Okay.
I get that the Star Wars is about destiny in a lot of cases. But yeah, I kind of dug it. I haven't seen Rise of Skywalker since the theater.
There was a fan theory that came out, supposedly from someone who works at Pixar before The Rise of Skywalker came out. The Last Jedi came out. And the theory was... because there's 2 flashbacks in The Force Awakens. There's Rey being left on that desert planet, and then Luke's Jedi Academy getting just obliterated by Kylo Ren and his homies. And so the theory was Rey's parents are... Rey's a refugee from the Jedi Temple.
Oh, that would be
cool. Her parents were 2 of Luke's students who get killed, and she gets deposited there.
Wow.
And I really thought that's what it was going to be. So I will say the twist got me when it wasn't that, and it was nothing.
It was, what's funny about that is that sequence of her remembering and seeing the visions, it is kind of framed that way, where, you see, I think it's first you see the death of the Jedis and everything, and then you see her being left behind and all that. That would be a very interesting... Man,
Pixar's got some smart people working there.
Yeah, I'd be curious about a Star Wars Pixar film.
Yeah,
what that could be like.
I'm sure there's fan art of it.
There's got to be.
Yeah, I saw a thing back when I was in college of like imagining DC villains as or DC heroes as Pixar characters.
Oh wow!
And for a while, that was my favorite representation of DC characters.
Oh,
I was like, what do you
dude.
mean Batman doesn't look like that?
They had that of Marvel characters as well, like Spider-Man.
Oh, no doubt. No
Yeah,
doubt.
it was really cool. It was like, and it was beautiful imagery. Like there was one of Peter Parker with the mask on, except for the suit on without the mask, and he's just looking in the mirror, and it looks perfect. It looks absolutely perfect, man. I would love to see that. So you know, we talked a lot about, you know, your history recording audiobooks, acting, and everything, Star Wars and Lightspeed, obviously. Is there a type of film, because you're an actor, is there a type of film that you want to like it's the dream, like this is the type of film I want to be in, like, or just anything?
Star Wars. Yeah. I mean, I think of cultural moments like that are the dream of any actor. Tom Hanks famously said, there's two kinds of actors. There's those that want to be famous, and there's liars. And but for myself, I always want to be. I always keep coming back to action movies. Like my dream kind of work is like smart blockbusters. Like there's no better example than Christopher Nolan.
Yeah.
Or you know, J.J. Abrams at his best. Like some of the recent Mission Impossible movies even. Like, dude,
the last couple have been great.
That last Mission Impossible movie had, I think, 2, if not 3 moments where I was like, I think I was saying to myself in the theaters, they just got me so good.
Yeah.
With like a misdirection or a twist. But yeah, if there was one, if I could condense the brand statement for my ideal kinds of projects into 2 words, it would just be smart fun. Like the Dark Knight is my favorite film of all time. So
it's a good choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like that encompasses that perfectly. It's this incredibly well-paced, just top to bottom, well-executed film. But we were actually just talking about it.
Yeah, we were talking about it.
Wait for it. Charlie's Coffee House. Shout out Kelly.
Coffee and comic book talk.
That's right.
It's awesome.
That'll be our spinoff podcast.
Yeah.
But we were just talking about, I was talking at you about the Nolan Batman films and how I felt that like there was cultural resonance to The Dark Knight, both for the time it was immediately in, but it was also prescient and predicting these sort of social through lines that you see now 14 years after its release.
Yeah.
So there was just this enduring sort of like enduring mirror that it holds up to. Sorry for society. I hate to sound like an edgy guy on Twitter, but
you sound like Brian. Brian being the guy who plays Raza.
Oh, do I?
Yeah.
Then we have something to talk about.
Society. Oh man, yeah, man, the Dark Knight it's one of my favorite films of all time. When you said smart fun, I couldn't help, not just because we're talking about Star Wars, but the movie I thought of that's smart and also tons of fun is The Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's one of the greatest films of all time.
Yeah.
You know, The Empire Strikes Back is where I think Star Wars became that cultural landmark that it became. You know, obviously the first one was the blockbuster for a long time. It was the case of blockbusters. You know, if you wanted to look at what a blockbuster was, it's the first Star Wars film. Yeah. You know, that's I don't know if that's where the term came from, but I think that might be where the term came from.
Came from Jaws, but that was right around the time.
Oh, okay, cool. Sharks in Space. It's around that time, the 70s.
So you should call dibs on that, because that's not the worst screenplay idea I've
Sharks
heard
in
all
Space.
day. Sharks in Space.
You know, this is going to be a little sidebar, but you know Tommy Wiseau is coming out with a new film about sharks.
About sharks?
Yeah, it's called Big Shark.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. I wonder if he's gotten better as a filmmaker.
It looks better.
I might watch that.
It looks like his version of Sharknado.
Okay.
He'll cite Jaws as the inspiration.
But
I mean, it looks like another Sharknado. But Tommy Wiseau, he's not in it though. He's not acting in it.
Okay.
Yeah, he's just the director.
Then he's just directing.
Yeah, He's matured as a filmmaker.
Okay.
I think.
We'll see.
But yeah, The Empire Strikes Back is a movie where it takes something that was fun, like A New Hope, and adds that layer of almost cynicism, of just like really darkness. And, you thought that your father was a big hero and shit. You thought he was the guy, the one everyone loved. And maybe for a time he was, but he came in and turned into the biggest motherfucker in the galaxy. He became the Dark Lord and everything. And I always love that. And him failing the Jedi training and everything. I love that movie. Not to sound like a negative Nancy or whatever, but it's kind of morbid, it's about failure, and they bring that up in The Last Jedi, where Yoda comes in and Yoda's like, failure is the biggest key to progressing, and I really love that aspect of it.
Wow, I never considered that, but you're right. Like, there's such depth. I mean, there is such like Shakespearean depth to The Empire Strikes Back, but I never really considered how horrifying, for lack of a better word, it would be to realize that your mortal enemy, I'm sorry, fucked your mom.
Oh, man.
Like, I don't mean to be crass about it, but I phrase it that way because that is how like Rick and Morty would frame it. That is how Rick and Morty would focus on it, as this sort of like psychosexual like obliteration. But the difference between those two is that Rick and Morty never rises above its cynicism.
Yeah, exactly.
There's never real like catharsis or hope or transcendence. It's just nihilism.
Yeah.
Like darker than the word you use, cynicism.
Right.
Like, ugh.
Yeah, it's gross.
But like but Empire gives rise to the rest of Star Wars.
Yeah.
So that's an excellent way to put it. I hadn't considered that.
Yeah. There's a return in The Empire Strikes Back, whereas in something like Rick and Morty, you don't go back to the innocence.
I think there's an audacity to ending that story on a somewhat hopeful tone. Like, Luke gets his prosthetic hand. He's with Leia, and they're looking out at the fleet being assembled.
They're gonna get Han back.
Yeah, and it just ends with that iconic theme. And I think that there is something to having the willingness and the imagination to say to yourself as a storyteller, like, how can we keep our creation, and by extension ourselves, from just descending into cynicism or nihilism or myopia or darkness?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there is something very enduring about that, because if they didn't have that, I don't know if you get a third movie. If you don't have that, you just get like, George Lucas watched Alien, which came out like between episodes 4 and 5, and said like, I want to make Empire Strikes Back as dark as that.
Yeah. Yeah. If they didn't have that element of adding that dark quality to something like Empire, and even A New Hope, because it gets kind of dark at sometimes, but more so in Empire, Star Wars, I don't think, would have become what it is, because you have something like Return of the Jedi, where it's about hope and resolution and healing, and then you get the rest of the films, and the prequels get progressively darker, but there is still that hope about it. I think that's kind of the magic of Star Wars as an idea, is that it is a war, but you can still find the light in that hope, in that unholiness. I love talking about Star Wars.
Well, I think it speaks to the source material that inspired Lucas in the original trilogy, which is like, because I know you mentioned, I was reading Sid Field's book the other day.
Yeah.
I actually, after hearing so much about it and thinking that I understood it, I got a copy of Joseph Campbell's Hero with a Thousand Faces, which is famously the sociological text that gave rise, or in part inspired, George Lucas to write Star Wars. Do you know it?
No, I've not read it.
So it is this theory of this sociologist, kind of literary critic named Joseph Campbell, who, in studying the mythologies of various cultures around the world, developed this theory that all of humanity and its mythology reflects a similarly recurring cycle of birth, growth, struggle, death, rebirth, both on an individual and a collective scale. And so that is the text from which the phrase "the hero's journey" originates.
Oh, okay.
And so if you go on like screenwriting blogs, you'll see these sort of distillations of his, what he calls his cosmogonic cycle, which is a fancy term for, which is the fancy technical specific term for what is now distilled as the hero's journey. And I thought that's all it was, but when you read it, dude, it is like reading the fucking acid trip scenes from Dune. It is so esoteric, but it's also so it's also remarkably well researched. And you know, granted, it is very much of its time, and you know, Joseph Campbell has his own biases, and scholarship has iterated upon his ideas in the intervening 50 years, but I think that there is some truth to what Joseph Campbell uncovered, what George Lucas spoke to, that makes those films, the original films, as enduring as they are. And to your point about like the requisite darkness that these stories have to have for there to be antagonism, discovering that Vader is Luke's father is a real shattering of one's identity, of one's ego, which is an integral part of that cycle that Campbell talks about and that Lucas gives rise to.
Well, I mean, if you, in that scene where he reveals he's his father, you see what Luke is willing to do right after. He's willing to kill himself.
Yeah, God, that is so fucking dark.
It is, you know, he realizes, like, because he, you know, beforehand he had the test under the tree and everything, and he realized in that his darkness can't overtake him.
Yeah.
And then he realizes, oh shit, my darkness is a part of who I am, no matter what. I don't want any part of that now, and I'm willing to kill myself, you know. I'm willing to fall down and die, you know.
It's very operatic. So to your earlier question about the succeeding stories that have followed, like particularly since 2015 with The Force Awakens, there's been nothing like that.
Right.
I don't think there's been anything like that. I haven't seen I have not seen many of the shows, but I would be willing to bet a copy of Save Him, American Commandos Saving Jesus, on sale now, that there's nothing like that.
They should do something like that in Star Wars.
Save Jesus?
Save Jesus. Yeah. They tried making, I think, what's his name? Anakin a Jesus figure, right?
Oh, they tried? Yeah, I would say they did that with the virgin birth. I would say that came up.
Yeah, it's true.
And then his mom is hung on a cross in that one scene.
Oh, shit. Oh, man, you need some clone troopers from the future to go back.
That's the one thing missing is time travel.
Well, I think they actually incorporated some of that in the Rebels cartoon.
Oh, really?
Some element of like a time travel thing. Not time travel as like, say, like Doctor Who or Back to the Future, but I think it's like a plane of existence. I have to catch up on all that stuff. I have not been watching a lot of Star Wars stuff just because I've been focused on what we've been doing, and if there's anything that would break the canon in our thing, like if I watched Clone Wars and it said something about the inventor, I'm like, shit. You know, so I tried looking at it as canon, but you know, it's so early on. Anything could be the case.
Sure.
Since it's so before.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of storytelling, is just like you can tell whatever story that you can justify.
Yeah.
So, if the history of the early republic and that isn't stated, then it's there.
Here's the thing. Here's how I look at it. This is what I'm going to tell everybody at the wrap party, which is coming up on Sunday. Our Sunday, not future us Sundays. if it gets copyrighted claim by Disney, it is canon.
Ha!
It's canon.
Okay.
It's canon.
I guess.
Right.
I guess.
If they want to claim it, it's canon. And I want my cut. I want royalties for everybody.
That is interesting. Oh man. That is interesting. I see the logic. I'm not a lawyer though.
Yeah, I'm not a lawyer either, but that's what I'll say at the court hearing, the courtroom cases or whatever. In the courtroom,
get a lawyer.
I'll get a lawyer.
Double check with a lawyer. I actually know an IP lawyer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There's a whole history of Star Wars fan films.
Is there?
Since the beginning of Star Wars. Are you familiar with any of them?
No.
Oh, none of them?
No.
Oh my God, dude, there's so many to watch. Like, because they get progressively higher quality and better and better and better as time goes on, and a lot of people get jobs because of the filmmaking quality they put into these projects. Like there's this great one which I'm going to recommend called Troops, where it's like a play on Cops, the television show, but it's about the stormtroopers on Tatooine. Have you heard of that?
Oh, no, I've heard of. Wait, tell me more. It's about a cops.
It's like Cops the show.
That's great.
And it's about the stormtroopers.
That's hilarious.
And they're filming a show, and it's in the style of Cops, and they're following them on Tatooine, and they go to the moisture farm, and they they come across Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru after Luke left, and they're arguing. It's like, no, we got a domestic issue here.
Oh, that's great. You know what's funny now that you mention it? I have heard of another fan film called Troops, but it was a Star Warsization of Kevin Smith's Clerks.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I think they took a scene from Clerks and they just kind of control F'd out references to Red Bank, New Jersey, and it's just replaced it with a galaxy far, far away.
Oh my God, that's genius. That's so good, dude. There are so many creative people out there making their own stuff in this canon, like there's all the best ones are with the stormtroopers in my opinion. There's one where by College Humor, I'm sure you're familiar with.
Oh yeah.
So there's one where they made they're drinking a year after the Death Star blew up as an anniversary in a cantina. Like 3 troopers are there, and the thing is, it's like a play on people's reaction to 9/11.
Right.
So they're like, I'm just gonna say it. I think the Death Star was an inside job. It's awesome. It's awesome. I knew like 3 guys on that thing, man.
Oh my God. That's a podcast in and of itself.
Dude, I know. Yeah, there need to be. I would actually be interested, not just because we did it, but I'm very curious what Star Wars could be like if they got in the narrative podcast, like officially got in the narrative podcast world, because you got like the Batman audio adventures. Have you heard of that?
No.
So that there's like a DC produced narrative podcast.
Oh, look at you,
Batman.
DC.
Yeah, Marvel did it with Wolverine and Old Man Star-Lord. There are so many. There's a Doctor Doom podcast, I think, where it's like it's what we did, but it's just by the companies themselves. I think that would be interesting. Is there a period of Star Wars that you would like to see, whether it be a narrative podcast or a book or a movie, a show?
That's a great question. I am enchanted by the Old Republic.
Mm-hmm.
I think because I really feel strongly about democracy and
right.
politics and sort of idealism around that. And I thought the political themes of the prequel films were a little cynical, and I also think they were a little sort of like, I think they kind of relied on circular logic of like, well, we can't trust the politicians, we can't trust the courts. It's like, well, why not? Because we can't trust the courts and the politicians.
Right.
It's like, I don't know what I'm supposed to get out of this as a viewer.
Right.
But that cynicism pervaded a lot of subsequent storytelling within the Star Wars universe, and it, as much as I enjoyed a lot of it as an adult, it kind of makes me roll my eyes and kind of makes me click through it of like, all right, this is just relying on kind of contrived circular logic that is not archetypal in the way that made Star Wars so resonant. So I would be very curious to see like what a galactic republic at its best functioning would look like, and what life would be like under that. Like kind of like what Star Trek was supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like
with the Federation and, and the treaties that had to be signed by planets. And
it's a vision of a utopia, of a united humanity in a time when humanity kind of needed that the most. And so for all of its, for everything that's aged poorly, the notion of humanity boldly going where no one has gone before together is just chicken soup for the collective soul. Mm-hmm. I would be really curious to see what a story would be like, what a Star Wars story would be like if it had those sort of stakes and idealism to it.
That would have been what you're saying about that political aspect, where you merge the idealism instead of the nihilism with politics. Yeah. That I think that would have been really good to showcase during the sequel trilogy.
I agree. Now that you mention it, I absolutely agree.
Yeah, because with the prequel trilogy, even though I don't think it all worked, it does make sense to have that kind of that closed-mindedness, because it's about the fall of that government. You know?
Yeah.
And with the sequels, it would ideally be about the rise of that government, of a new age, a utopia, as it were. Adam Savage from Mythbusters had a really good quote about the difference between Star Wars and Star Trek, which actually helped with the project. Was Star Trek is about the utopia, whereas Star Wars is about the dystopia.
Yeah.
Where things break down and things don't work, And what you're talking about, I wonder how that would be if they did movies about the Old Republic. Would it be a better, cleaner, clean-cut organization where democracy is a thing? Or would it be the beginnings of the corrupt nature of it, That's an interesting point.
Well, I think you always have the specter looming of corruption, of greed, of selfishness in any political system. Mm-hmm. Welcome to the Goat Politics Podcast, by the way.
We've done it before.
So I think the question is just how do you contend with it, and what keeps those forces at bay or doesn't. So to your point about it being the Old Republic, it could also just be the New Republic, having learned the lessons of the previous several decades of war and strife and, again, getting dark, genocide.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And also just
and Merry
blindly...
Christmas, by the way.
Oh yeah, Happy Life Day. And also just kind of looking away when you should be looking towards something, like, for example, the Jedi's not dealing with the slavery on a place like Tatooine, just knowing about it and not even, and sometimes playing ball with it, like with Qui-Gon making that trade for Anakin.
Yeah, that is kind of fucked up. That's one of those things though. That is one of those things though where it's like you want to put that in a sequel if there is substance or subtext to it that is going to relate to the viewer, as opposed to just being of the world building and of the fictional contrivances of the stories that came before it.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think if there's a good example.
I think Star Trek is a good example of
what
you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Someone scoffs at, I think there's some famous episode of the original William Shatner series where they pick up a straggler who's been deserted, and he's like, "Thank you so much. How do I pay you?" And they're like, "Dude, we don't have money anymore." What are you talking about?
They had all sorts of moments. They had the one where they picked up Space Abe Lincoln, and the Abe Lincoln was just chilling in space.
What?
Yeah. Did you never see that one?
No. I love Lincoln.
Abe Lincoln was just chilling in space, and they picked him up, and it was I don't remember everything about the episode, but it was a figure that went by Abe Lincoln and looked like Abe Lincoln, and he's from that time. It's interesting. I don't know why I started talking about that, but that
is ahead of its time.
It is
for a white run show in the 60s to call that out of touch, but there you go.
Yeah. And they had Shatner kiss Uhura.
Oh yeah,
the first interracial kiss on television.
Good.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah,
I love that episode. I just that scene I watched. It's amazing. Shit. I think a movie about the troopers, the stormtroopers, are, you know, literally just taking that part of Battlefield or Battlefront 2,
yeah.
you know, where it's about the clones and how the stormtroopers came in and everything.
Yeah.
Because the stormtroopers are not clones, clearly, you know. That transition would be an interesting either series or film or something.
Yeah.
You know?
Dude, imagine being a clone at the end of the war and they're like, hey, you're not soldiers anymore.
Yeah.
You're just people.
Yeah.
And like, imagine that sounds like Star Wars meets Stand By Me.
Yeah.
Like, now we're going off to
it's like Lieutenant Dan
find
from
ourselves.
Forrest Gump.
Kind of, yeah.
They actually do that, a couple things like that in some of the shows. You didn't see Obi-Wan?
No, I didn't. Shit, I completely forgot about that. It looked good. I think a couple of friends of mine worked on that.
Oh, really?
In varying capacities, yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, they have a moment where Obi-Wan's just on a different planet. He's walking by. And it's like this dirty, kind of disgusting planet. And he looks to his right, and on the floor is a clone trooper, but with a beard, and it's like a homeless vet.
Wow.
And he's just like sitting there.
That's real shit.
And it's played by the same actor, so he's
oh,
like,
yeah? There you go.
Yeah, he's just like, you got some change for me. And it's great. Yeah, do a whole show about that. That would be sick.
Oh, my God, dude. Imagine being the one actor who has to play every clone.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That would be a challenge. That's like Tatiana Maslany in Orphan Black with all the different characters she has to play.
Oh, I've never seen Orphan Black.
It's about clones.
Oh,
not
okay.
a spoiler. Don't worry.
Okay.
But that means she has like 5 or 6 characters to juggle over the course of a show. I've only seen the first episode, but it's just a mind-blowing.
And that's the actress who
feat.
plays She-Hulk.
That's right.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, and they did, and all I thought of when you said that was Monty Python, where they play everybody.
Oh, right, yeah,
everybody
yeah.
plays everybody.
Oh, that is interesting. That's a way to justify only having 4 actors to work with.
Yeah, you save some money.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah, this traffic attendant is the James model. That's why he's played by James.
Exactly.
He's in James 2.0.
They literally, that's what the clone show would be.
That is
Or
brilliant.
the clone movie or whatever.
Anybody steals this, we're suing you.
It's cool. Hey, man.
As soon as we beat Disney in court, we're suing you if you steal this idea.
Look, they can take all the money. Just say it's canon.
Yeah.
It's canon.
Yeah. And then we'll sue you.
And there you go.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think we got it. I said that a lot during our recording sessions. I think we got it. But
That's film, baby.
that's it. Is there anything lastly you want to say to the audience who might be listening, to Star Wars fans, about, you know, everything that we've gone through, you know, the whole project and all that?
Well, number 1, it releases Christmas Day. Is that right?
Yes.
All right.
The
well,
25th.
Thank you for listening.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, bright and early. Have some coffee, open up your presents, and veg out with Star Wars Lightspeed. But I think the one thing that's worth saying before we get out of here is just so much of your framing of this endeavor, which has begun almost 2 years ago.
Yeah.
At this point, is I really admire how you've been saying this is something that we did together. We brought all of these people together. It's like, but someone has to point out, like, dude, you did this.
Oh.
Like, I don't know if you had anyone else writing this, but you spearheaded writing this and you worked on it for a year. You brought all of these people together to either help you with production, editing, promotion, all of the people who performed in it. You performed in it yourself. Every time I saw you at Charlie's Coffee House, shout out Kelly, you were talking about how I got the first act done. You know, we're 30 pages in. You know, I'm just trying to get this ready by Christmas. And there is an ocean of people out there who want to either hear more stories or they want to, like me, take part in them. But sometimes the most difficult thing is bringing people together and taking that first step and either asking for help, inviting someone on, just having the audacity to say to yourself, I'm going to take this thing that's currently only in my head and I'm going to make it real in some way. And as someone who struggles with that, I am so impressed. And if I may say, I'm so proud of you for making this happen.
You're going to make me cry, dude. Jesus.
Shake my hand.
Yeah, let's over the mics, we're shaking hands. Oh my God. That really, oh my God. Oh, Jesus Christ.
This is what it's about.
Yeah.
You know, as much as we all want to make money and get famous and not get sued by Disney, it's
I do want to get sued by Disney, by the way.
Yeah, fucking bring it, Disney. See you in court, Iger.
I mean, that would be the best marketing gift ever.
Correct.
If they sued us.
Correct. It's definitely fair use. So pick your battles, Bob. But no, man, it is at the end of the day, we tell stories because we want to tell stories, and we hear them because we want to hear them, and they give us life and they give us meaning, and that's what that is the small part that you have allowed us all to play.
Oh man.
The grand tapestry of the cosmos.
Well, that really meant so much. Thank you so much, Nick, for saying that. Thank you so much for helping me out. Thank you to you and to everyone else who was a part of this, everyone who's listening to it, who was waited, because I've heard all sorts of things about when this thing coming out. Are you gonna get done? And
yeah,
it's coming tomorrow. It's gonna be out.
Yeah.
I am so appreciative because there are times where I didn't think this was even gonna happen. This point, times I wanted to give up on it, and it pays not to give up. It pays off.
Yeah.
To persevere. You have to. And I know you're writing stuff right now, and all I can say to you, my friend, is you have to just persevere.
Thank you.
You have to keep it up, man, because great things happen from that.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I did.
And I'm excited for everyone else to hear it.
Yeah.
We're going to have the rap party.
That's right.
Yeah, and that's going to be a great night.
Yeah.
And you're going to meet everybody. You're going to meet the cast.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to it.
It's going to be great.
Some illustrious voices I've gotten to hear. I haven't put a face to them yet.
Yeah,
if I may, I'd also like to say to everyone who's still with us, thank you very much for listening. Joining me in my first podcast appearance.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for checking out Star Wars Lightspeed.
Yeah.
This was all for the joy of it. And so whatever you get out of it, that's why we did it.
Hey, cheers to being on your first podcast.
Oh, cheers to that.
Yeah, to many more.
Yeah,
right?
Inshallah.
Yeah, Kishman took us around, Guys, thank you so much for listening. Tomorrow's the big day. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa. That's one of them? Kwanzaa?
Yep.
Yeah, Kwanzaa. Happy Life Day, happy holidays to everybody. Have a good one. Stay safe. And may the Force be with you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. You've made it to the wrap party of this project that all of us have worked on. This is this is Star Wars Lightspeed. And when I say thank you, I actually do mean thank you, because it's all of you guys. You guys made this happen. We're here because of every single one of you and everyone who couldn't make it tonight. And this is a really, not only emotional moment, but this is I'm proud of everyone here. I'm proud of us all making this. It's a little piece of fan fiction, but it's ours, And I was telling Nick right here plays Duncan, my co-lead in the picture. And it's not a picture, it's an Earth podcast. I was telling him that if we get any sort of copyright claim, or if we're sued, it's canon. So you can now officially consider yourself part of the Star Wars saga. Oh,
hell yeah.
Go, right, clap for yourselves, guys. So I don't want to, drone on too long, but I just want to really say thank you guys so much for this. I'm going to show you right now. I'm going to show you two things. I'm going to show you, firstly, the trailer, which came out I think it was a week ago, and then I'm going to show you the first 10 minutes of the podcast. Only a couple people have heard it and know what they're in for, and hopefully you guys like it. Are you going to light up that lightsaber? Hey, lift it up, lift it up, lift it up, lift it up! All right, guys, thank you so much. We're gonna get it set up, and then we're gonna make this happen. Thank you.